Hi everyone, hope you're all well today. And so let's get into the chanting straight away before our meditations and the Dharma talk. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami. Dutiyampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Dutiyampi Sangham saranam gacchami. Tatayampi Buddham saranam gacchami, Tatayampi Dhammam saranam gacchami, Tatayampi Sangham saranam gacchami. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Sanghaya. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the six paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the six paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the positive potential I create by practicing the six paramitas, may I soon attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. May they be free from suffering and its causes. May they never be parted from the happiness beyond suffering. May they abide in equanimity, free of bias, attachment to the near, and aversion from the far. I shall cause this. Great compassionate Buddha, please inspire me to be able to do so. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, and present clouds of every types of offerings, actual and mentally transformed. I confess all of my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in all the virtues of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until cyclic existence ends, and turn the wheel of Dharma for all sentient beings. I dedicate the virtues of myself and others to the great enlightenment. However innumerable all sentient beings are, I vow to save them all. However inexhaustible my delusions are, I vow to extinguish them all. However immeasurable the Dharma teachings are, I vow to master them all. However endless the Buddha's way is, I vow to follow it completely. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Tayata Ungati Gati Paragati Parasamgati Bodhi Soha. Tayata Ungati Gati Paragati Parasamgati Bodhi Soha. Tayata Ungati Gati Paragati Parasamgati Bodhi Soha. So, time for some meditation now. But just before we do that, I'd like to wish Ahmed a happy birthday today. 21 again. And I apologize, apologize for everybody else that I'd missed your birthdays. But Ahmed let me know earlier today that it was his birthday. So if you want me to say happy birthday during Dharma class, let me know. Shoot me a message and say, hey, it's my birthday today. And then I will wish you happy birthday. But not sing the song. You can sing the song later. So anyway, let's get ready now, get comfortable for the meditation. Let's release the tension from the body. Bring your mind inside your body and release the tension from the tips of your toes up to your shoulders, down to the tips of your fingers, and then back up to the top of your head. And now scan your body once more to see if there's any more tension you can release. And now bring your mind initially to the tip of your nose and focus on the breath or the feeling of the breath as you breathe in all the way to your lungs and then back out your nose again. Breathing in, breathing out. That's all we have to do right now. You can also add the extra technique of counting the breaths 1 to 10. But if you get distracted on the way to 10, go back to 1 at that time. If thoughts arise or any mental sensations arise, don't cling to them. Don't grasp at them. Don't try to force them away or deny them. But simply replace your mind back onto your breath. Let them go naturally as you do that. And if your mind starts to become dull or sleepy, then wake it up a little bit by replacing your mind back onto your breath more brightly. So let's practice like this in silence for a bit. So now we can feel pleased with ourselves and fill ourselves full of loving kindness. Visualize yourself filled to the brim with the white light or white nectar. Or you can just go with the feeling too. Fill yourself with so much loving kindness that it now overflows and radiates outwards, initially to your loved ones, family, and friends. And also to strangers, those people you're indifferent towards or don't know. And also to those you may regard as enemies, those people that you find it very difficult to think about even. May all of these people have happiness and the causes of happiness, be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they be peaceful. And now let's radiate this loving kindness out further and further distance-wise, starting around your immediate area, to all living beings now. The ones that live in the waters, on the land, fly through the air, whether born from wombs, eggs, moisture, or through transformation. May they all be free from suffering. May they all be happy and peaceful. Now further and further throughout your whole state or county, through innumerable living beings. And other states and counties throughout your whole country. And other countries throughout the world. Those you're familiar with, have an affinity towards, those you're indifferent towards, and also those that you may have negative feelings towards. Until your loving kindness pervades throughout this whole world, throughout all of the oceans, down to the core of the earth, and to the outermost atmosphere. Sharing the loving kindness with all the living beings. And now throughout the solar system. And throughout the whole galaxy, the universe, till your loving kindness pervades throughout infinite space. And now let's switch techniques. The loving kindness meditation obviously is to develop more and more loving kindness based on equanimity. This next meditation is called giving taking, or Tonglen in Tibetan. And this is to develop more and more compassion. Of course, the compassion actually includes loving kindness. They are married together, inseparable, and based on equanimity. So we will give all of our happiness, all of our goodness away, all of the things that we find pleasing, and we will take upon ourselves the suffering of others, free them from suffering, and destroy our ego and attachment to self, and also give away all of our attachment, make them happy. So as you breathe in, as you inhale, the black smoke leaves the heart centers of all living beings in front of you and enters into your heart center. It melts away your ego. As you breathe out, the white light leaves your heart center and enters the heart centers of all living beings, giving away all of your goodness, all of your merits and good karma, everything you find pleasing. So let's practice like this for a short while. Breathing in, breathing out, utilizing this visualization technique. So now we can feel pleased with ourselves again. Rejoice. Rejoice in the merits. Rejoice in your goodness. Rejoice in the rejoicing. So now let's dedicate the dedication, or do the dedication prayer. Due to this merit, may I soon attain the enlightened state of the Buddha, so that I may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhicitta, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And may the precious view of Shunyata, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. And so now we are continuing the commentary on the third verse of the 8 verses of thought transformation. Last week we did the part 1. Now it's part 2. And it will be part 3 next week. And then we'll move on to the 4th verse. So I've checked out my notes, and I'm pretty sure we'll be able to finish up the 3rd verse next week. Okay, so where we finished off last week was this. The essence of Dharma practice is that state of freedom from suffering and mental afflictions that lie at the root of suffering. Freeing ourselves from the 3 poisons. We need to uproot these 3 poisons and all the others. The ignorance, the attachment, the aversion, the pride, the doubts, and the wrong views. And then all of the other ones that they give rise to. But as soon as this mental affliction arises, then at that moment, recognize it, be aware of it, mindful of it, aware of it, and then conscientiously let it go by replacing it with the antidote, the wholesome. So if you act with greed, for instance, then be generous, non-attached generosity, okay? Or you can bring to mind the teaching on emptiness, even though it's only a concept still to us right now, and everything is empty. These mental afflictions are empty. Even applying the antidote is empty. And everything's impermanent. You can do that. And at that time, you can sort of like uproot the ignorance that gives rise to these mental afflictions, or that mental affliction at that time. Okay, so whenever you recognize the negative emotions arising, at that moment, let it go, okay? Uproot it at that time. Be active in the practice, you know. Be patient with yourself, patient with everything, and make the effort to relinquish these mental afflictions when they arise, as soon as they arise. Like I say, nip the negativity in the bud at that time. So that's where we finished off last week. Now I'll just read some of these short little verses that I've written in my point notes. This verse addresses how to overcome these mental afflictions, these emotions, these negative thoughts, okay? If we nip it in the bud, then it's not going to flow through to our speech or our physical actions, is it? The real enemy is the enemy within. So often we think the enemies are outside of ourselves. You know, people you don't like, or bad people behaving badly, dangerous animals maybe. But actually the enemy, the real enemy, is our mental afflictions, okay? These mental defilements or afflictions, they give rise to all of the pain and suffering that we experience. In fact, they give rise to all of the pain and suffering throughout the whole world, the whole universe. Wherever there are sentient beings, there are mental afflictions, and they give rise to the pain and the suffering. Our goal is to defeat this inner enemy, to overcome it, to eradicate it eventually. Right now, we practice moment to moment. As we practice, the practice becomes more natural. As it becomes more natural, then we spontaneously start to uproot these mental afflictions. Can you see where I'm going with that? It becomes natural to do so. It's an inner practice. Yes, we regulate our body and our speech, you know, with right speech, right actions, right livelihood, for instance. But it's the mind that we are working to purify totally, okay? Applying the antidotes to these afflictions is the heart of the Buddhist practice. It's the foundation, in a sense. It is essential to cultivate mindfulness, awareness, and conscientiousness right at the beginning, as soon as the mental affliction arises. So applying the antidotes to these afflictions is the heart of Buddhist practice. The right effort, in a sense. The paramita, the virya paramita, which is the right effort or the perfection of effort. So as soon as the mental afflictions arise, we become aware of it, or we're mindful always, and then aware that it has arisen, and then we conscientiously, with good effort, good enthusiasm, stop it, uproot it, nip it in the bud at that time. If possible. Don't be down on yourself if you don't get it right straight away, okay? It's okay to take a bit of time in the practice. Don't be hard on yourself. Okay, so for if we let the negative emotions and thoughts arise without any restraint, without any awareness of their negativity, it's like we are giving them free rein. You know, to use an example I use often, and that is the weeds in the garden. They will grow. They will become overwhelming if we don't nip them in the bud, if we just let them grow, you know. I know in our veggie patch, fairly recently, I had to actually dig them out and rip them out from the root because we had a lot of them in there over time. And of course, if they take over everything, then the veggies are not going to get the nutrients they need to grow properly. And so it's like that with the mind. If the negative emotions grow, become overwhelming, then they supersede, they kind of overcome the good qualities that we need to develop on the path to enlightenment. Okay, excuse me. So we need to uproot these negative emotions as soon as they arise. Nip them in the bud. Be proactive and not reactive. Like I say often, be proactive. proactive in practicing the Dharma, not reactive, and letting these negative emotions overcome us. Otherwise, they may develop to the point where there is no way to counteract them. For instance, when you get angry, fully blown anger, it's very difficult to wind back, isn't it? You have to slowly wind it back. You can't get rid of it straight away. And so this is like all of the negative emotions are like this. But anger is the most destructive and probably the best to give examples from. However, if we develop mindfulness and awareness of their negativity, especially, really be aware that they are negative emotions, that they can only bring pain and suffering. Then when they occur, we will be able to overcome them, eradicate them as soon as they arise. We won't give them the opportunity to develop into fully blown negative emotional thoughts at that time. Negative emotion arises, from that arise more thoughts, sort of one to the next one, and so on, okay? If you nip it in the first one, then it won't become bigger. And then, of course, won't turn into physical actions and words following. We should apply this antidote whenever negativity arises. It manifests as soon as we're aware of it, immediately. As soon as these negative emotions manifest, we nip them in the bud. We become mindful of them. We become aware of them. And at that time, be conscientious and nip them in the bud, okay? We're actually getting through quite a lot of these very quickly. We may not yet be able to get to and uproot the root, which is ignorance of these mental afflictions, but we can apply the antidotes that are appropriate to specific afflictions and thoughts immediately. For instance, greed, I mentioned before, generosity is the antidote for greed, and non-attachment. Of course, greed comes from attachment. Therefore, obviously, non-attachment is an antidote. Anger, apply patience. And also add to that loving kindness, compassion, because anger is closely related to dislike or hatred or aversion. Hatred, obviously, has to be overcome with love and compassion. When the mind is full of love, full of compassion, there is no hatred. There's no possibility for the hatred to arise and to grow. To counter attachment, think about the impurity of the object, its undesirable nature, etc. Now, maybe what example can I give you for this one? Let's say you find something really beautiful. Maybe just a flower to begin with. Very beautiful flower. But then you can contemplate the impurities. It's impermanent. It doesn't last. You have an attachment to this flower right now, but it's not going to be there all the time. In fact, like if you use the example of the garden again, if you don't work in the garden, pull the weeds out in the garden, then the flower won't be healthy in the long run, in the future. Also, let's say you have an object of desire, another person. You can contemplate the impurities, the fact that that person is a sentient being, has mental afflictions, is not perfect, sometimes maybe get angry. And you can even, if you're really attracted physically to another person, for instance, you can contemplate the impurities in the body, the urine, the poo, all of these things. I know it's not attractive to do that, but it's a really good way to do that. I remember years ago, I won't say too much about this or name any people. We had a fundraiser for the UN Vesak event, and a couple of the guys from my classes back then came in my car, and we drove an hour to get there. Anyway, they met some very attractive to them, girls, especially one who I knew actually quite well. And they on the way back in the car, they just couldn't stop talking about how beautiful she was. And, even asked me whether I could give them the phone number and things like that. And so I actually said to them, contemplate the impurities right now. I said, I've been listening to you for half an hour driving back about this. And I said, now it's time to give it up, because you're going to cause yourself trouble in the mind. I said, that doesn't mean that you won't get to know this person. That doesn't, maybe sometime in the future, even get together with this person. I said, but right now you're causing yourself sort of difficulties because you're thinking about it now, but she's not here. So think about the impurities, contemplate that. They said to me, oh, I don't like doing that, And I said, but it's actually really, really good antidote to do that. Contemplate the impurities of what it is you're attached to, whether it's a person, animal, whether it's anything, whether it's your car, your house, whatever, So, and by the way, if you're down about things and if you find things repulsive, contemplate the purities, because some things are pure, in the relative sense. Contemplate how you don't know everything. You are not enlightened yet. For instance, contemplate the things that you don't know about. For instance, myself, I don't really know much about computers. I only learned how to use this computer when it was bought, when I bought it. So, and Leisha, thank you very much for teaching me a lot. And then, of course, I make a lot of mistakes, try not to, and then I learn from those mistakes, what not to do on the computer, for instance. We don't know everything, be a little bit humorous with this as well. We get so attached to ourselves, which then gives rise to these mental afflictions. But if we contemplate our own imperfections, our own impurities, if you like, then this will help us. This is the antidote, to let go of attachment to self and other. Replace the unwholesome with the wholesome and have confidence that we can practice this way. It's really important to have confidence in yourself that we can actually practice like this. Have trust in yourself that even if you make mistakes, you're going to recognize these mistakes. You're going to be mindful, be aware, and conscientious. Okay, mindful, just observe the mind, aware when the negativities arise and other mental states arise, and then conscientiously apply the antidotes. Okay, I've mentioned a few antidotes to you today. But at the moment, I'd suggest that you replace it with the opposite. So replace the unwholesome with the wholesome and recognize that all things are impermanent. And like I said, have confidence in yourself that you can do this. Have trust in yourself. It's possible. And you could say have faith in yourself as well. We can purify these mental afflictions with practice. I mentioned before, and other times, the more we practice consistently, correctly, accurately, the more it starts to become natural for us to do so. The more natural it becomes, the more we can then quicken our path to enlightenment, if you like. We can develop wisdom and compassion, for sure. It just takes time and effort. So we've actually gone through 2 pages today, so I'll reiterate a few things, but leave it there, and then we'll move on to verse 4 next week. So I mentioned to you that the first verse, the commentary on that, was going to take a long time because the other verses will be covered a bit as well, which we did. That's 7 parts to that. And then the second verse, I think 4 or 5 parts. So this one, only 2 parts. And I had a look at the 4th verse. I've got just 2 pages of notes, so maybe 1 or 2 classes, and maybe 1 class each for 5 and 6. But verse 7 will be quite in depth, so many more parts to that one, and of course 8 as well, which is the ultimate bodhicitta verse. And so the wisdom part, to marry with the compassion, you could say, of the first 7 verses. And so whenever thoughts arise, negative emotions arise, at that time, confront them. Be courageous in the practice. So whenever it arises, confront it and avert it, eradicate it at that time, nip it in the bud. And like I said to you before, the teaching on the buffer zone from many, many years ago, and also a short article that I wrote probably, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago now. This actually the buffer zone where you put a gap, protection gap, if you want, between our perception of this mental affliction in this case, and reacting to it, impulsively reacting to it. So we put that buffer zone in between that so that we don't sort of follow through with it. Okay. What else can I say? Apply the antidotes consistently. If you find that you're getting irritated in the practice, maybe a little bit overwhelmed, then step back at that time. And that's actually still practicing. Just sort of middle path. You don't go too hard or too soft on yourself. Not too much, not too little. Not too tight, not too loose. Just like a guitar. If the strings on the guitar are too loose, you won't make any sound hardly at all. Just plop, plop, plop. And if they're too tight, they will break. So tune the guitar the way it should be tuned. Concert pitch, if you like. That way you make nice sound. It's the same with the piano strings. A lot of people think, oh, it's a keyboard. Actually, there's strings in there, isn't there? Of course, unless it's an electronic keyboard, which is the only ones that I've ever owned. Of course, we still own one actually downstairs. I bought Mum one many, many years ago, and it's in the cupboard, just gathering dust maybe in the cupboard, along with a lot of my music equipment actually these days. So maybe I need to have a garage sale at some stage. Okie dokie. So I rejoice in your goodness as always. There's only a minute and 4 seconds to go. So practice well, practice consistently, study as well, get to know the Dharma teachings more and more, absorb your mind with them in the meditation practice or with the meditation practice. Apply the 3 wisdom tools, hearing the Dharma or reading the Dharma, contemplating the Dharma, utilizing your ability to investigate and analyze, and then absorbing your mind with what it is that you've learned. Okay, even if it's still not perfect learning or knowing yet, absorb your mind to that level at that time, and then continue to encourage yourself, be confident in yourself that you can improve all the time. Keep walking towards the Dharma, towards the truth, towards enlightenment. Don't go backwards, or if you do go backwards, that time, collect yourself, move forwards. Okie dokie.